What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today I have my Las Vegas Raiders season preview for y'all, so let's hop into it. And if you like this type of stuff, please consider subscribing. But anyway, last year the Raiders finished with a 6-11 record, which they missed the playoffs. They were third in the AFC West, and what was ultimately a pretty disappointing season for Derek Carr's last year in Vegas. So this Raiders team went out and did sign a decent handful of free agents. They brought in linebacker Robert Spillane, wide receiver Philip Dorsett, quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, who was their headline free agent signing. He's going to come in and replace Derek Carr. Hopefully he can stay healthy this year. I know he's battled with injuries in the past, so I think the Raiders' success this season starts with him. It obviously always starts with the quarterback, but if Garoppolo can stay healthy, that will be a big deal for the Raiders. They also brought in defensive back Brandon Fashyson, wide receiver Jacoby Myers, safety Marcus Epps, tight end Austin Hooper, quarterback Brian Hoyer, cornerback Marcus Peters, and running back Damian Williams to back up Josh Jacobs. So, like I said before, they did bring in a solid chunk of guys. They didn't really re sign too many notable guys. They brought back defensive tackle Jerry Tillery, wide receiver Keenan Cole, linebacker Curtis Bolton, and they did place the franchise tag on running back Josh Jacobs because they couldn't reach an agreement because of the running back situation going on right now where the NFL organizations are undervaluing their running backs. So he got tagged, so he will be with the Raiders this season, but playing under that. And they did lose a solid chunk of players as well. Quarterback Derek Carr, the big one. I think this will be the first time since like 2014 that he won't be their starting quarterback. So that's going to be a little different, kind of a little adjustment period to get used to that. Wide receiver Mac Hollins, defensive end Clinton Farrell, linebacker Denzel Perryman, tight end Foster Moreau, cornerback Rocky Sin, quarterback Jarrett Stidham, and defensive tackle Gerald McCoy retired. So a lot of the guys that they lost, they did replace fairly well in the free agency. They lost both their starting and backup quarterbacks, which they went out and brought in Brian Hoyer and Jimmy Garoppolo. And then all the other positions that they lost, they did bring in a guy or two to replace. And they did have a pretty decent draft class as well, filling needs. With their first pick, they brought in defensive tackle Tyree Wilson. Then they went out and grabbed tight end Michael Meyer, defensive tackle Byron Young, wide receiver Trey Tucker, cornerback Jacorian Bennett, quarterback Aiden O'Donnell, safety Christopher Smith, linebacker Armani Burney, and defensive tackle Nested Jade Silvera. So a pretty deep draft class. A lot of these guys I think can contribute to this team right away. Tyree Smith on the defensive line. Michael Mayer I think will be a pretty good tight end for the team, as well as defensive tackle Byron Young, another guy that can contribute on that defensive line. And I do think the Raiders are going to improve this year. They don't got any new staffing changes, which is good, but they do have a decent amount of players, so getting them up to speed on the current scheme will probably be the biggest road bump this team faces, and it might be messy the first few weeks in the season, but I think this group can come together and play relatively good football. So with all that in mind, let's move over to their schedule and my record prediction for the Raiders. All right, now, so in week one, they have the Denver Broncos, and I think this will be a good matchup just because both of these teams, the Raiders and the Broncos, they just have a lot of unknowns. Like, I don't think a lot of people know how these guys are going to perform, either one. Like, is Russell Wilson going to bounce back and have the Broncos be a powerhouse? Is Jimmy Garoppolo going to come in there, change the Raiders culture, and have this team be competitive in the AFC West? I'm not really sure. So I do think this will be a fun one to see. And ultimately, because they are division opponents, they play each other twice. So because of that, I feel safe giving the Raiders the season split. So this week one matchup, so because it's at Denver, I will give them the loss right here. But I will change the week 18 one down here to a win. And they split the season series with the Broncos. And then in week two, they have the Buffalo Bills. They travel, they're also on the road. And that's just a tough environment, especially for a new team with a new quarterback and a lot of moving parts and a lot of new pieces. I think it's tough to go into Buffalo and get a win, especially early on in the season. So I think they drop in week two as well. And then in week three, they have the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think around the week three mark is when they're going to start meshing really well together. So I do think they will beat the Steelers right here in week three. But then they go on the road and face the LA Chargers for their first of two matchups. And I do think they probably lose this one right here. So in week five, they have the Green Bay Packers. They're finally back home. I'm not super high on the Packers, and I feel the Raiders will get the win right here, as well as in the following week against the New England Patriots, also at home. So they're rattling off a couple of wins here. And then in week seven, they play the Chicago Bears, and they keep the win streak alive and win this game right here. But sadly, their win streak comes to a halt the following week when they travel to Detroit and drop this game to the Lions. And then in week 9, they have the New York Giants, and I feel they probably also slip up this game and lose to the Giants. But the following week, still at home, they have the New York Jets, and I feel like this is probably their statement win of the season is against the Aaron Rodgers led Jets. I don't think this is going to be a great year for the Raiders, but they will have really good games against relatively better teams. And I think this Jets team is prone to upsets, is prone to trap games. And I think this is just kind of what that is the Raiders just get the better of the Jets this week. But then heading into their week 13 bye, the Raiders lose in week 11 to the Dolphins and in week 12 to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think they will probably get swept by the Chiefs. I do think it'll be close. They're divisional games, so they will be good. But I do think they probably just lose them both. The Chiefs are a good team. And yeah, that's that. So at their week 13 bye, they're sitting at a 5-7 record, just below that 500 mark. Things really haven't gone their way, but they've just kind of been medaling along, learning the system, improving as they go. A bunch of growing pains for a team with a lot of new players. I know I keep saying that a lot. I apologize, but just ultimately not that great of a year, but stuff to look forward to for the future. And then coming out of the bye, they have the Minnesota Vikings, and I feel they slip up and lose this one, as well as in week 15 against the Los Angeles Chargers. So effectively being swept by both the Chiefs and the Chargers and splitting the season series against the Broncos. And then in week 17, they play the Indianapolis Colts with a rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson, who at the time of recording this video just got named the Colts starting quarterback for the season. So hopefully he is healthy all the way through. And I do think the Raiders are a better team than the Colts, and they do win this game right here. And we already talked about them splitting the season series with the Broncos, and that brings their season total to 7-10, which isn't anything great. It is an improvement over last year when they finished 6-11, but they do just kind of have a tough schedule, especially down the stretch, and there's not too many easy wins for them this year, and just a lot of things don't go right for them this year. I think injuries could hurt them a decent bit. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Do you think this record is kind of right on point with the Raiders? Do you think they will be better? Do you think they will be worse? Let me know down in the comments. So yeah, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I will catch you with another season preview. God bless.